When archaeologists began excavating a remote site called Jebel Irhoud near Marrakesh in the 1960s, they had no idea they were about to rewrite the story of our species. What they found buried in the deep red soils of Morocco shook the scientific world to its core. The skeletal remains of Homo sapiens, modern humans, dating back approximately 300,000 years. These were not just ancient bones. They were the oldest known remains of our kind anywhere in the planet Earth. Think about what that means for a moment. Morocco is not merely a country in North Africa. It is the cradle of humankind itself. Those early humans sheltered in caves, hunted with stone tools and lit fires beside rivers that have long since dried into dust. They gazed up at the very same stars we see tonight and perhaps asked, for the very first time, what lay beyond the darkness. The first flicker of human thought may well have stirred in this ancient land beneath an African sky. Thousands of years passed. The Great Sahara Desert, today the world's most punishing wasteland, was once a lush green paradise. Elephants and giraffes grazed across grasslands that now lie buried under burning sand. In this fertile world, a people took root who called themselves the Amazigh, meaning simply the free people. They were not migrants. They were not conquerors arriving from some distant shore. They were the truest children of this soil, as native to Morocco as the Atlas Mountains themselves. Their identity was not something imposed or borrowed. It was something born, woven into the land over countless generations of survival, storytelling, and stubborn pride. It was they who first gave Morocco its soul. Around 3,000 years ago, ships with colorful sails appeared on Morocco's horizon, sailing in from the eastern Mediterranean. The Phoenicians, the greatest traders of the ancient world, had arrived. They were not warriors seeking conquest. They were merchants seeking profit. But in building their small coastal settlements, they did something far more powerful than any army. They planted the seeds of civilization: Lixus, Mogador, Tamuda. These names ring out as Morocco's first cities, built by hands that had traveled 1,000 miles from their homeland. Yet the Amazigh did not vanish before them. They absorbed the newcomers without losing themselves. Their language survived. Their customs endured. Their identity remained alive in the hearts of every family. This was the first expression of a pattern that would repeat itself across the centuries. A land that could be entered, but never truly conquered. Then came the Romans. At the height of their empire, the province of Mauritania Tingatana, covering much of northern Morocco, became a thriving corner of the Roman world. The city of Volubilis rose with its marble columns, paved streets, public baths, and markets fragrant with spices and fresh oil. It was a place of astonishing beauty, and its ruins today still stop travelers in their tracks. But the Romans, like all who came before them, did not stay forever. When the empire fractured and collapsed, the cities remained, but their masters vanished. Morocco endured. In the year 641 AD, a force arose from the Arabian Peninsula that seemed to leave nothing unchanged in its path. Arab-Muslim armies, burning with a fervor that could move mountains, swept westward from Egypt. One by one, North Africa fell before them, until in the late 7th century, the great general Uqba ibn Nafi rode his horse into the waves of the Atlantic Ocean and roared at the heavens, "God, if it were not for this sea, I would ride on in your name until I had brought your glory to every corner of the world." Whether that scene is history or legend matters little. What it captures is real. A will of iron had come to Morocco, determined to transform everything it touched. But the Amazigh, who had spent centuries learning the art of survival, did not yield easily. A warrior queen known as Kahina, whose name meant the prophetess, rose to lead her people against the Arab advance. A woman who had defeated male commanders in open battle, she fought for years before she finally fell. And when she fell, she became a legend, alive in the memory of the Amazigh people to this very day. Yet when the Amazigh did embrace Islam, and many did so from genuine conviction, not compulsion, something extraordinary happened. They did not simply adopt a new faith. They merged it with their own spirit, their own music, their own ways. What emerged was neither Arab nor Roman, neither African nor Mediterranean. It was something entirely new. It was Moroccan. In the year 788 AD, an exhausted, wounded man crossed the desert and arrived in Morocco. His name was Idris ibn Abdallah, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, and he was running for his life. The Abbasid caliphs in Baghdad wanted him dead. He had escaped their assassins by the skin of his teeth and had nowhere left to go. But this political refugee would become the founder of Morocco's first independent royal dynasty. The Amazigh tribes welcomed him, not merely because of his sacred bloodline, but because of who he was, just, wise, and genuine. Idris the Furian built mosques and schools, established law, and brought a sense of order to a land that had known chaos. The old Roman city of Volubilis became the seat of this new state, but his enemies in Baghdad did not rest. They sent an assassin with poison, and Morocco's first king died young. His story, however, was far from over. Idris II, born after his father's murder, carried the dream forward. He founded the city of Fez, and in doing so, he gave the world something it did not yet know it needed: a center of learning that would illuminate centuries of darkness. The University of Al-Qarawiyyin, established in Fez in 859 AD, is recognized today as the oldest continuously operating university in the world. Read that again. The oldest in the world. Not in the Islamic world, not in Africa, but on Earth. At a time when most of Europe was stumbling through the gloom of the Dark Ages, Fez was alive with philosophy, mathematics, medicine, and theology. Scholars traveled from across the known world to study in its halls. Morocco was not on the edge of civilization. It was its beating heart. Picture a band of desert warriors, their faces wrapped against the blowing sand, driven by a vision larger than themselves. They called themselves the Almoravids, drawn from the nomadic Sanhaja tribes of the Sahara. In the 1040s, there were only hundreds of them, but their faith burned like the sun overhead. Within 4 decades, they ruled from Morocco to Spain. Their leader, Yusuf ibn Tashfin, founded the city of Marrakech in 1062, the city from which Morocco takes its very name. With its red walls, its palm gardens, and its labyrinthine souks, Marrakech was never merely a capital, it was a statement. Civilization had come to stay. Then came the call from Spain. The Muslim princes of Al-Andalus, bickering among themselves, weakened by division, were crumbling before the Christian kingdoms of the north. Alfonso VI of Castile had already seized Toledo. In desperation, they sent for Yusuf. At the Battle of Zalika in 1086, the answer came with thunderous force. Moroccan cavalry, who had never seen war on European soil, shattered Alfonso's army. The war drums of Marrakech sent such terror through the ranks of European knights that their horses bolted in panic. The Iberian Peninsula remained in Muslim hands for another century. A band of desert nomads had changed the map of Europe. The 12th century brought a new dawn. The Almohads, a religious and political movement born in the Atlas Mountains, overthrew the Almoravids and built an empire that stretched from Portugal to Libya. At its peak, the Almohad state was the largest power in the Western Islamic world. But what made the Almohads truly immortal was not their swords, it was their pens. In the Almohad court, a philosopher named Ibn Rushd, known to Europeans as Averroes, produced commentaries on Aristotle so brilliant and so precise that they were translated into Latin and ignited a revolution in European medieval thought. Without Ibn Rushd, there may have been no Renaissance. Ibn Tufayl, Ibn Battuta, Ibn Khaldun, each name carries within it a different intellectual earthquake. All had their roots in this Moroccan soil. The Koutoubia Mosque in Marrakech, the Hassan Mosque in Rabat, the Great Mosque of Seville, whose minaret still stands today as the Giralda, all were raised during the age of the Almohads. These structures still reach toward the sky, telling anyone who will listen of a time when Morocco was the architectural wonder of the world. By the 16th century, Morocco faced a new threat from the sea. The Portuguese seized Ceuta. The Spanish came next. Morocco's ports fell one by one under European cannon fire. The kingdom teetered at the edge of disaster. Then the Saadian dynasty rose. In 1578, at the Battle of Wadi al-Makhazin, known to history as the Battle of Three Kings, the Saadians achieved one of the most stunning military victories of the era. A Portuguese army led by King Sebastian himself was annihilated. 3 kings died on the same field in a single day. Portugal did not recover for decades. The kingdom that had threatened to swallow Morocco had itself been brought to its knees. The greatest of the Saadian rulers, Ahmad al-Mansur, filled Morocco's coffers with gold flowing north from Sudan and transformed his kingdom into one of the wealthiest states on earth. His palace, the Badi, rose in Marrakech in such impossible splendor that even its ruins today steal the breath of those who walk among them. In the late 17th century, the Alaouite dynasty came to power and has never left. They rule Morocco still. More than 3.5 centuries of unbroken sovereignty over the same land. It is one of the most remarkable records in the history of any monarchy on earth. Ismail ibn Sharif, who reigned from 1672 to 1727, was among the most fearsome and capable rulers Morocco ever produced. He built his capital, Manus, to rival Versailles. Louis XIV of France sent him diplomatic letters and dealt with him as an equal because he was one. Morocco in those decades played in the league of European superpowers, but Europe was changing. The Industrial Revolution, steam-powered warships, and modern artillery were rewriting the rules of power. Morocco, which had once led the world, found itself falling behind. And in 1912, the blow came. In the city of Fez, a document was signed that split Morocco open. The Treaty of Fez made Morocco a French protectorate. Spain claimed the north. An ancient kingdom that had stood for more than 1,000 years was overnight divided between 2 European powers. But resistance began on the very first day. In the Rif Mountains, Abdul Karim al-Khattabi declared the Republic of the Rif and dealt Spain a catastrophe that stunned the world. At the Battle of Annual, 15,000 Spanish soldiers fell. The reverberations were felt across Asia and Africa, inspiring independence movements from India to Indonesia. A Moroccan tribesman had shown the world that colonial armies were not invincible. Across the country, people were waking. The Istiklal Party was formed. Newspapers thundered against occupation. And at the center of this resistance stood a young king, Mohammed V, calm, dignified, and utterly unbending. The French believed they could make him a puppet. They were wrong. When France exiled Mohammed V to Madagascar in 1953, hoping to crush the independence movement, they made the greatest mistake of their colonial history. Banishment transformed the king into a saint. Mothers wept in the streets. Children whispered his name. His face appeared on wedding cakes, on walls, in secret prayers offered up in the dark. 2 years later, France had no choice. They brought him home. On the 2nd of March 1956, Mohammed V spoke into a microphone and told his people they were free. There are moments in history that defy description. That day in Morocco was one of them. Tears and laughter tangled in the streets of every city. Old men and women who had been born under colonialism, who had never known a single day of sovereignty, who had quietly come to believe that occupation was eternal, stood in the open air and felt something they had no word for, because no one in their living memory had ever felt it before. They felt the weight of another country's boot lift from their necks. Morocco was theirs again. Mohammed V replaced the old title of Sultan with that of King and steered Morocco into the modern era with steady hands. He died in 1961, but his son Hassan II, one of the most complex and commanding statesmen of the 20th century, took Morocco through nearly 4 decades of turbulent transformation. Hassan II's reign was a study in contradictions, economic development alongside political repression, modernity alongside tradition. The darkest chapter, known as the Years of Liad, saw political opponents imprisoned and silenced. But Hassan II also engineered one of the most extraordinary geopolitical maneuvers of the century. In 1975, he organized the Green March. 350,000 Moroccan civilians walked peacefully into the Western Sahara and reclaimed it. No shot was fired. No treaty was violated. An entire territory was brought home through the sheer will of a people walking together. In 1999, Mohammed VI ascended the throne. Educated in Europe, attuned to a modern world, he moved quickly. Political prisoners were freed. A Truth and Equity Commission was established to reckon with the Years of Liad, the first initiative of its kind in the Arab world. The pace of change accelerated. Today, Morocco is a country in transformation, so rapid it can take your breath away. Casablanca, the economic giant, holds the financial pulse of an entire continent. Fez and Marrakech, their ancient medinas inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List, keep history alive in their twisting alleyways, in centuries-old workshops where craftsmen still work leather and brass the way their great-grandfathers did. In the desert near Ouarzazate, the gateway to the Sahara, the Noor Solar Power Complex stands as one of the largest solar installations on Earth. A land that once suffered under a merciless sun has learned to turn that sun into wealth. The metaphor almost writes itself. In 2022, at the World Cup in Qatar, Morocco's national football team did something no African team had ever done. They reached the semifinals. Across the streets of Casablanca, Marrakech, and Rabat, people danced until dawn. The world watched in astonishment. In 2030, Morocco will co-host the World Cup alongside Spain and Portugal, A fitting reunion of nations whose histories have been braided together for 1,000 years. The Amazigh, whose ancestors first gave this land its soul, were formally recognized in 2011 when their language, Tamazight, became an official language alongside Arabic. Centuries after Queen Kahina fell defending her people's freedom, her descendants have their voice back. When you look at this long journey, from the ancient bones of Jebel Irhoud to the solar farms of the Sahara, from Kahina's last battle to Mohammed VI's reforming hand, one truth stands above all others. Morocco never truly lost. The Phoenicians came, built, and sailed away. Morocco remained. The Romans came, raised their marble columns, and retreated. Morocco remained. The Arab armies came, brought a faith that changed the world, and Morocco absorbed it and made it its own. The Almoravids, the Almohads, the Saadians, the Alaouites, each dynasty rose and reshaped the land, and Morocco outlasted them all. Even colonialism, with all its violence and humiliation, could not extinguish what burned here. Morocco is not merely the sum of its history, it is a living idea. The idea that you can be ancient and new at the same time, that you can be Muslim and modern, African and Mediterranean, Arab and Amazigh, traditional and global, all at once without contradiction. The idea that identity is not a stone but a river, always moving, always itself. The language of Morocco tells this story better than any historian could. Moroccan Arabic, Darija, is shot through with Amazigh words, French phrases, and Spanish echoes. A Moroccan will sometimes speak 3 languages inside a single sentence, not because they are confused, but because they contain multitudes. Every civilization that has ever set foot in this land has left something behind, and Morocco has made that something its own. The smell of saffron and cinnamon drifting from a souk that has been open for 5 centuries. The sound of Nawa music, rooted in sub-Saharan Africa, flowering in Moroccan soil, echoing through the square of Jama' el-Fna at dusk. The delicate plasterwork of a Marinid madrasa, its geometric patterns so intricate they seem to move. A glass of hot mint tea placed in your hands the moment you cross a threshold, because in Morocco, to receive a guest without tea is to offer an insult. These are not tourist attractions. They are the living memory of a civilization 300,000 years in the making. The next time someone mentions Morocco, let it land differently. Let it mean something more than a stamp in a passport or a picture of a camel at sunset. This is the place where human beings first looked at the sky and asked who they were. This is where the first university opened its doors. This is where desert warriors changed European history, where a queen refused to kneel, where a king stood up to an empire with nothing but dignity and won. 300,000 years ago, on a hillside called Jebel Irhoud, someone looked up at the stars above Morocco and wondered. History has been answering that question ever since, and it is not finished yet.